Welcome back to the special correspondence edition of Off the Record with Jonathan Osteen, Samantha Schreiber, Zoe Clark, and Rick Pluta. Our lead stories: the governor says no to any more tax cuts. And what will she say in her State of the State? Sit in with us as we get the inside out. Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Good morning to this winter morning in Studio C. You guys, a long drive up from A Squared, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
A little snowy, but, got our Michigan boots on under the table.
that's cool. All
And
right,
you just drive slow and keep some distance.
All right, let's talk about taxes or not.
It's an age-old philosophical and political difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. Republicans love to cut taxes to help citizens, while the Democrats love to spend more of that money to help those citizens. And as the 2024 legislative session begins to unfold under the dome, the two sides are back at it on which is the best way to go. Last Friday, the state's major bean counters forecast additional revenue for the state, minus those federal COVID dollars that created a massive surplus in Michigan government for 2 years. Not anymore.
There's a lot less revenue for us to figure out how to solve some of these challenges.
But the ranking Republican on the House Budget Committee, Representative Sarah Lightner, she argues there is enough new revenue to give some of it back to you. The governor, however, in a preemptive strike, is ruling it out, saying, quote, "I don't see any big sweeping changes on that front," end quote. So much for that. Meanwhile, the House Republican leader, Matt Hall, has been blasting the Democrats for already raising your taxes in this new year, as a temporary income tax cut last year expired because the Democrats did not extend it. And he predicts the governor will raise taxes again based on some of the recommendations her Population Growth Commission has endorsed. This Lansing chair of the Senate Budget Committee reports that everything is on the table at this early stage, but she has not endorsed a tax hike at this read. Are you going to have to cut some of the budget?
Everything's a part of the negotiation. If something's not working on behalf of the people, of course, we'll reconsider.
Meanwhile, the governor will lay out the groundwork for this traditional inter-party political debate over tax cuts and spending when she releases her new budget next month.
All right, so Jonathan, the governor was talking taxes all week this week, and none of it was what some of the progressive folks wanted to hear.
Yeah, right. She's going on a tour across the state to remind folks of targeted tax cuts they did last year that are just now taking effect. The governor's going to be, her administration is going to be sending out checks, in fact, starting next month to people who qualify for the Earned Income Tax Credit. It was a fairly large package, but a targeted one. It doesn't surprise me that she's not interested in a broad-based income tax cut. She wasn't last year. You recall Rick Snyder often opposed Republican efforts to do a broad-based income tax cut. Certainly different budget times back then, but Democrats in general don't support cutting the income tax itself because it's a flat tax, and the biggest beneficiaries of that would be the richest by a dollar-to-dollar amount.
Mm-hmm. And then you have progressive organizations such as the Fund My Future Coalition, and what they want to see is an increase to Michigan's corporate income tax on businesses. What that increase would look like, they're not quite sure, but they have done some polling and see that when people are initially asked about would you increase this, there is some support there on who they're polling.
Why wouldn't the governor sign off on that?
I think it's just, can I just go back? Fascinating. Hat tip on getting the Senator Sarah Anthony interview while she's getting her jacket on from the closet. I know you go wherever you need to get that interview, Tim.
Thank you for noticing.
Yeah. I think we all did. I think what's really fascinating here is this is just the age-old conversation that we have in Michigan, right? Whether there's a couple extra $100 million after CREC or whether there's $9 billion because of federal relief money that had come into the state over the past couple of years. I mean, this is the age-old conversation. What do you do? And to Jonathan's point, because there was this change last year, because there was then this opinion by Attorney General Dana Nessel that's saying, no, it's going to come up again. And the fact is, whatever happens, we'll be talking about this next year and the year after, because this continues to be economic policy debates between Republicans and Democrats in the state, and we should say, federally as well.
But I would dare say that this is a great time if you are a policy nerd, because the legislature is very much kind of dipping their toes back into the waters of what will be 2024. And there are some proposals on the table that do have affiliated price tags. A big question that I have is the governor's the 15 weeks of paid family leave, is that proposal dead?
It's on life support.
Well, anything can be negotiated, and the thing is, the paid family leave is actually pretty popular. On the tax front,
except in the business community.
Except in the business community, but there's still the business community can donate, but doesn't individually vote.
Or they could ask something, or they could ask for something in return.
And they could. I mean, everything is negotiable.
The idea of paid family leave is, of course, very popular in polling. The question is, how do you pay for it? Which comes back to the tax discussion. The initial proposal by Democrats last year essentially would have been a payroll tax on most employees in the state. They'd have to pay into a system to provide family leave for everybody. And when you ask people if they want to pay a payroll tax, I'm guessing those polling numbers don't look as good.
I'm also curious if some of the conversation right now, particularly this week, is, I don't want to say like a news vacuum, right? But there is this sort of this scheduled thing that happens in Lansing during this period of time, right? So like lawmakers come back after break. We're all kind of waiting, hearing what's going to happen in State of the State Wednesday evening. Then, as you note in your setup piece, the governor, puts out her budget deal. There's this vacuum too, because we have the 54-54 split in the House. So we know nothing's really going to happen there until April at the earliest. Vis-a-vis tax cuts or budget.
Well, and there will be hearings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good period of time for people to talk.
No votes on the budget are happening before April. I think we can.
But it's a great time for Republicans and Democrats and whatever other coalitions you want to throw out there to be able to talk about.
That's what I'm saying.
In the abstract, what they would do.
Exactly.
So something like paid family leave, for example, it is something that would take an automatic deposit out of your paycheck and then goes into a fund that would be overseen by the Department of Treasury. That probably would not get bipartisan support, especially when you look at strong opposition from the Michigan Manufacturers Association, the Small Business Association of Michigan. What could be bipartisan? I wonder, could it be the FOIA reform? Could it be some transparency pieces?
How about moving the tobacco tax over to vaping products and e-cigarettes, which the governor said, if you listen closely, it's something she would look at. She said, I'm not going to lead with that, but that's an overture to dance, isn't it?
Oh, sure, it is. And you might not, the vaping tax might seem like, it's an easy one, but I mean, that also falls on small businesses. So.
And recall that again, Governor Rick Snyder, former governor, tried to do that as well. It was not popular with Republicans who controlled the legislature at the time. It didn't go anywhere. Now have times changed as vaping has become more popular.
But remember, the governor went after the vaping stuff almost right out of the box. Remember that? She had a whole to-do with them, and the court stood in and took her off course.
COVID happened. A lot of policy things kind of took a little bit of a backseat when that happened.
Senate Democrats do have a package right now, and this is a pretty big tax. It would be on a vaping electronic smoking device. It would be a state tax worth 57% of the wholesale cost of that vape. And then there's some other components too. So for example, a retailer who sells vapes would have to seek an additional license from the state in order to do so. On top of that, if you are a store and you have a poster that says, come on in, we have pumpkin spice vapes, you could get a $1,500 first violation fine that would then go into a brand new tobacco and nicotine regulation fund.
Well, in this money,
you could come up with a campaign to sell that. I mean, remember John Engler and running against Joe Camel versus school kids for raising the tobacco tax, not insubstantially.
Well, the campaign is very simple. We will save your kid's life. Huh?
And
Next, film at 11.
And there was some details. A report just came out this week. I mean, this is a little, not so much about vaping, that Michigan actually is one of the states that spends the least amount when it comes to.
Yeah, when it came to recommendations from the CDC of how much the state should be spending when it comes to tobacco prevention programs, Michigan was the second to last.
Like our population growth, we're 49th in everything.
However, you know what is a small business? What is
Save
a
some
small
lives.
business?
Maybe that'll help.
That would have to be reporting their inventory to the Department of Treasury, that would have to feed up some additional costs in order to have vapes in their inventory. Small businesses they include convenience stores.
Let's also not lose sight of the fact that this is, boys and girls, an election year, and tax increases, they tell you in the playbook, is stay away from them, even if you can sell them. So is there the nerve to go down there, even though the governor is not leading the parade?
Oh, I doubt it from the governor's perspective. I think what we're going to see is fairly status quo on the tax front this year. There will be a lot of debate and maybe some nibbling around the edges. But again, the governor is making a big point of pointing out what they did last year. Republicans are going to keep harping on this issue because it's good politics
let me just
for them
ask this
that
question,
the tax rate is going back up
The
this year.
Democrats let the tax reduction lapse. Are they guilty of a tax increase? Is that a tax increase, Mr. Pluta?
Sure.
Is it?
It's total semantics, however you want to play it. You can use both ways.
Is it?
Not a punt. It's accurate.
No, it's a
Well,
punt.
yes, it's
Oh,
accurate, but I
Lord,
want to
you
answer to my
too.
question. Is it a tax increase?
Is it a tax increase? Oh my goodness, I'm nervous to answer this. I kind of want to second
Agree.
what
Yeah,
Zoe
thank
said.
you,
Would you
Sam.
agree with me a punt? Because you can really, it's all about messaging at the end of the day.
Did the tax go up?
Right.
Is
You
that
were
a
paying
tax
less,
increase?
And then it comes out.
Okay.
And
Ms. Clark?
Okay, Mr. Skubik, when all of the education funding was cut under the Snyder years, right? And then they started to every year add a little bit more education funding back.
Yeah.
Would you say education funding went up? You absolutely could say education funding went up, but the asterisk of it was cut so much. So compared to what is all I'm getting at. It's more nuanced.
Was it a tax hike when Governor Snyder blocked the income tax rate rollback?
Exactly. I'm just trying to say it's a little more nuanced. And for our public television viewers who appreciate the nuance, we're trying to explain that.
I totally agree with you. It's a nuanced thing, but here's
sorry,
the thing.
say that again? You
Yes,
totally
I agree with you. Okay, but the Republicans have the advantage on messaging.
Absolutely. In the
right?
8-second
There is
soundbite,
no
the 3-second soundbite.
Well, you're going to talk
100%.
about, the tax rate or the revenue side, but they're linked.
Democrats have the deflection available to them still.
Yeah.
The Attorney General issued an opinion. A court has upheld that opinion so far that tax cut was only meant to be temporary in the
Yes,
first
but it
place.
just
or at
took you
least the way it
20
was
seconds to explain that,
Of
and you
course.
had to keep people's
Of course.
attention.
Yeah, it's a
and
tough deflection.
it's a losing
Well,
battle.
I think the takeaway here is that you can describe, in what you said about semantics. It was a tax increase because the tax rate was this, and it went to that. And you can go
But they
back
could say,
further.
we never voted on that.
You
We
could
never
also
voted
say
on
it was
that.
a restoration,
But it's still
not an increase.
But a restoration is still.
This is why we're
is
journalists
still
and not messengers.
an increase.
You had Craig
But
Mager on.
what are you using the money for?
Yeah, well, you obviously had Craig Mager on the show last week to talk about the Detroit News polling. I mean, in that polling, it talks about, what are some of the top issues that are getting voters fired up to show up to the polls in 2024. And a majority of that was the economy. It was inflation. It was the cost of living.
Tax cuts are nowhere to be found. They're after, used car salesman regulations.
So, I mean, I think Republicans, they can be very fired up because when you saw the beginning of the year when the governor and the Democratic trifecta was doing things like the expansion of the earned income tax credit, was doing things like trying to bring public pensions back to being tax-free, which they were successful on. Republicans were fighting to keep that rollback, said that this rollback has to be protected at all costs.
Well, and the progressives also have been quietly behind the scenes talking about the old graduated income tax, the fairness issue. The governor said, what about that this week? Did she rule it out?
She said that she favors it in theory, but that is not something that, because she endorsed it when she was a legislator.
She has confirmed that she's not running away from it, but she's not going to
on her agenda. And that it would require a
we're going to have to pay Rick Snyder a finder's fee for this show. He's got more mentions on this show than he did when he was governor.
It's not something that the legislature or the governor can do on their own. They could put the question to voters, but somebody would have to be willing to spend millions of dollars on a campaign.
Look, if you're a Democrat, don't you want that on the ballot?
I also wonder, does the governor have, because she is the co-chair of Biden's re-election campaign, does she have to do some heavy lifting in our state to get his approval ratings up? Yes. So you have to be kind of careful with what you're willing to sign. And that's why I think things like paid family leave could be in a dangerous position. Will that actually get done? And then there's some other proposals on the table as well that I could see the business community. They haven't spent too much money in the last year when it comes to opposition communications, but there are some proposals on the table that I think they're ready to spend some money on.
All right, Jocelyn Benson has opened a can of worms with the African American community by asking the U.S. Supreme Court to put on hold the redistricting of these districts to make them more equitable for African Americans. Talk about a heavy lift. What are the political implications of what she did?
Well, the political implications are you have a court ruling saying that these districts were racially gerrymandered, and now you have the state's top election official saying, yeah, but let's wait until the next election cycle.
Why?
Well, her argument is that, and perhaps there's validity to it, we'll see what the court says. Her argument is that it would be essentially too short of a timeline to make all these changes and to have, a solid election infrastructure for administration set up.
The candidates have to choose their districts.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately for her, the three-judge panel said this can be done, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that after the Independent Redistricting Commission, when voters approved it, I mean, it took a while to get these maps done, right? And there was a lot of input, and there were a lot of maps. And now it's like, okay, but can you guys do it in like couple weeks.
Now, given
it's much fewer maps, right? I mean, it's fewer maps. I mean, it's 6 and then 7 in each chamber. But I mean, the brevity at which now they're doing it. I mean, it's just sort of incredible to watch. And they're coming up against this deadline, to your point. And so then you have the Secretary of State saying, can we hold off for a second? Because there's all these deadlines to get ballots out. And as Rick said, for candidates to decide which district they're even going to run in.
Well, they have to get the 7 House districts done by early February. That is coming up in, 2 weeks now? Or February's right around the corner.
I mean, we're 10 days away. It's February 2nd.
And there are some people that will say they can just do the 7 districts and that will be all. But then there's also conversations of how do you make sure that you just stay within those 7 jurisdictions? Yeah. Aren't other districts going to get impacted as well?
How do you change the district lines of 7 districts without going into the districts that are adjacent?
That's what we've seen. That's what we've seen this week.
Back to my original question of the political fallout here for Ms. Benson. There was a very, very nasty press release that came out yesterday out of Detroit from Sam Riddle et al., who basically said this was a race
consultant.
I'm sorry.
We should just say that he's a political consultant.
Yes, in the African American community, basically accusing her of taking that sort of a racist approach to that. Was that not mentioned? You guys didn't see that?
I actually didn't see this press release. This has been a constant, I want to say back and forth with the Benson, and the redistricting commissioners and Detroit residents who have taken this fight on, have taken it to federal court saying that these maps lacked representation. So it doesn't shock me at all that, if and when the Secretary of State, as she did this week, is saying, wait a second, can we delay, that the folks who don't want there to delay and took it to court for the first time are going to say, we don't want to see that.
I just want to take a dinner table conversation that we've had out, and put it out on the table here. Who predicted that redistricting is going to go to court because redistricting always goes to court?
Well, Pluto, ladies and gentlemen.
Have you ever been into the rumor, the Detroit plaintiffs involved in the case that, basically flagged these districts for being racially gerrymandered? When you are in the room with them, when they're holding their press conferences, these people are fired up. They are outraged.
They have no representation in Congress.
And look, Secretary Benson tried to walk a fine line saying, I'm not taking any position on the composition of the districts themselves, simply an election administration issue.
This is logistics. This is mechanics.
To your point, critics who feel these districts definitely were racially gerrymandered and are fired up about it aren't going to read that nuance.
All right, so and an unfair district is an unfair district, and saying that we're going to wait 2 years to fix that problem, well, that is going to get people fired.
Right, so I know that you want to move on, but I do have to say, who may or may not run for governor in 2026? If Jocelyn Benson, and she's been kind of described as a likely potential candidate.
She's running.
She's going, and she lives in the city of Detroit.
Breaking news here?
Sam, she's running.
And is she writing another book too?
Speaking of books, thank you. I needed a segue to get into that. I owe you one, Clark.
But she's going to need those Black Detroit leaders if she wants to have any success in a gubernatorial bid. I'm done now.
Thank you. All right, let's turn the page on whether the governor is writing a book or not. And there's a story. Anyway, here's what she had to say.
I always look forward to this.
For the past 5 years, Governor Gretchen Whitmer has continued a Michigan public TV tradition of this one-on-one exchange at the executive residence. And the first question produced this revelation. Given her new political profile on the national stage, a handful of journalists have asked her to write a book about her life.
At some point, that might be something that I want to do.
Do you want to do that?
At some point. I feel like maybe there's a short book to write, maybe sooner, and, talking about different pieces of my philosophy.
The governor notes that after she is out of office in 2026, this might be next.
Ultimately, maybe a longer form book, but that comes later, like maybe when I'm done being governor.
Coincidentally, in 2026, the governor will be out of office, and it'll be just 2 years before the next race for President of the United States. Other politicians, before running for president, wrote books. Barack Obama did. Former U.S. Senator John McCain did. Michigan native Mitt Romney did. What about Governor Gretchen Whitmer? You know what people are going to say. Everybody who's running for writes a book before they do it.
Yeah, well, lots of other people write books too and don't run for anything.
Do you have a title?
No.
Oh, it's obvious. It's obvious.
What's my title?
That Woman from Michigan.
All right, would you buy a copy?
Remember, the governor was willing to be President Biden's running mate the last time he ran. And remember, in last year's interview, she did not rule out a bid for president, saying anything was possible after she left office and not before. But listen to the first gentleman and then her on this revealing inquiry about potential life in the White House. Would you like to retire in the White House?
No. but I'll say.
How about the
same? You can leave it there. It's fine.
Yeah. And the same question to you.
No.
Make of that what you will.
All right, so the page 6 from the New York Post basically said that she had already signed a deal with Simon Schuster. She says, quote, not accurate. What did you make of what she was saying there? What was the most important line in there?
Oh, there was so much. What was the most important line?
Lots of people write books.
Yeah, I mean, you've written a book, Tim, and you're not many books, too. I was 2 books, Tim. Sri Tanadar has written a book.
Actually wrote both of them.
Look, it was intriguing. I think it's also interesting. Page 6. It's page 6, but also, Whitmer has a national profile. She's making page 6 for the possibility of having a book deal. That's interesting.
And you could have a book deal in the works and not, have signed the contracts yet.
It is not shocking. It sort of tracks with what we all sort of have seen as she has really just sort of skyrocketed into national media over the past 5 years as governor.
The key line in there, the first book was not going to be about her life.
Right,
that's the real story.
About her philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that she's considering a book before her time out of office, I mean, it stirs palace intrigue, of course. I mean, there is still perhaps a remote possibility that something happens to Joe Biden, he pulls out, and the Democratic nomination is decided at a convention. Were that to happen, I'm not saying it will happen, but were it to happen, of course Gretchen Whitmer would be.
Yes, she's been waiting.
I would put in this question to you, Tim. How many governors since Bill Milliken not ineligible because they were born in Canada have put some serious effort into at least looking into a race for president?
Well,
the answer is all of them.
Yes, and all of them have written books. Bill Milliken had a book. Jennifer Granholm had a book. Jimmy Blanchard had a book.
I wonder
but all
if
after
it's
the fact.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's bad luck, though, to write a book while you are still a sitting governor. Ron DeSantis has a book and not doing so good in those presidential primary polls. Andrew Cuomo had a book, and we know how that story went.
I know Gretchen Whitmer. She's no Mr. DeSantis, okay?
No, it's definitely. But I think she will wait until after her term until we start to seriously talk about will there or will there not be this book.
All right, Justin Amash says he wants to be a U.S. Senator, maybe.
And possibly Speaker of the House. And, you know, I mean, look, this is sort of par for the course. As we know about Justin Amash, that he tends to kind of put these feelers out about
Isn't
different...
he a little late to the party?
Well, what are we at now?
Well,
is it 11?
Considering the fact that he left the party.
Well, maybe he wants to come back to the party. Are we at 11 now, right? Republicans running on the U.S.
If they all show up.
If they all show up, I mean, we're going to get close to a baker's dozen.
Yeah.
Yes, it does feel late. He's West Michigan. I mean, we've already got Meyer, West Michigan. I just don't know what the lane is.
Former Congressman Lane certainly occupied. the Trump critic lane occupied by
Yeah,
Peter
I don't know
Meyer.
exactly. I don't know what lane you take at this point. But it's also, again, it's not shocking Whitmer's writing a book. It also doesn't seem shocking that Justin
Well,
Amash
if you
is putting
assume that Donald Trump is going to put his fermata on this, okay, Justin Amash is toast.
Yeah,
Right.
no, Justin Amash
Even
will not
without
get the,
that.
Yeah. I still don't believe that Trump's going to make any endorsements in this race.
Whoa.
I think that's my personal belief. I'm going to make a gamble right now and bet on it, just because I think he's more focused on himself. He has his own re-election campaign. He has his own court proceedings going on. I think I've said this before on the show. I think the era of Trump goodies that we saw in 2022, I think that has concluded.
Talk to James Craig about that. Talk to James Craig and see if he wants that endorsement.
And Rogers, he also made a Trump endorsement and was talking about how we need to get Trump reelected to bring our 401ks
Was that a flip-flop, by the way, on Mr. Rogers' part?
I mean, it's interesting that he wrote this editorial that was getting a lot of attention when he first ran and saying basically that Trump was a detriment, and now he's this week saying, well, maybe not so much.
It's interesting watching all
I got to
these
get out of here,
Republicans
Ricky. Okay, did
just
this
trying
show
to return to managing the situation.
All right, did this show move fast?
Yeah, I
It
think
sure
so.
did. Thank you for all being here. Don't forget our State of the State coverage, both on public radio and right here on public TV, next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. See you there.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan Public Television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.